briefly placed a lockdown on the whole area, along with the Treasury Department next door. President Trump was not at the White House at the time, having left D.C. Last night, actually, to spend the Thanksgiving holiday at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach. And likewise, Vice President J.D. Vance was outside D.C. at the time of the shooting as well. Now, in response to today's attack, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth announced that President Trump has ordered another 500 Guard members into D.C.
This happened just steps away from the White House. It will not stand. And that's why President Trump has asked me, and I will ask the Secretary of the Army to the National Guard, to add 500 additional troops, National Guardsmen, to Washington, D.C. This will only stiffen our resolve to ensure that we make Washington, D.C. safe and beautiful.
Now, those 500 new National Guard members would come on top of the already 2,188 Guard members already assigned to D.C. The FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force is leading the investigation into today's shooting, working to determine if it was an act of terrorism. The Secret Service is also looking into whether the shooter intended to target the White House itself or anyone under the Secret Service's protection. But as of now, there is still a lot we don't know. The investigation is really just beginning. And again, we'll bring you anything we learn during the next hour to update you. But joining me now to discuss all of this is MS Now Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian and former Assistant Special Agent in charge at the FBI, Michael Feinberg. Ken, let me just start with you. You've been covering this all very, very closely. Tell me, is there anything that I missed there about where the investigation stands right now, or any updates that you've had from your sources?
There's one new piece of information, Jen, and the New York Times is reporting, and MS Now has confirmed, Mark Santia and I, that this 29-year-old Afghan entered the country in 2021 through a Biden administration program called Operation Allies Welcome, which accepted around 90,000 Afghans. And people may remember it was a kind of a furious operation at the end of at the conclusion of America's involvement in Afghanistan, where we were trying to give sort of rescue some of the people that had helped the United States cause, or Afghans who were in danger. And there was a lot of vetting that took place very quickly. And this person was admitted into the country at that time. Now, there are also reports, we have not confirmed these reports, that he then later applied for asylum last year and was granted asylum by the Trump administration this year. Again, MS Now has not confirmed those reports, but in fairness, I want to offer the full context for our viewers. And so that, of course, is one piece of the puzzle here as investigators try to seek out what the motive is. And we don't know what the motive is, but obviously thoughts are, of course, turning to, was this some form of Islamic extremist terrorism? That's not without precedent in these kinds of situations. That's exactly what investigators are looking into right now. As soon as the FBI concluded that this was a targeted attack on uniformed members of the armed services, they took over the investigation from D.C. police, worked to identify the suspect, and now no doubt are going through his digital footprint, his social media accounts, trying to interview relatives, trying to piece together everything they can learn about this man's life while he was in the United States, his movements before the attack, where he got the weapon, all those questions at the moment.
What we know is that he comes here from Afghanistan. Now, this is a guy who's been living in Washington State, not Washington, D.C., on the other end of the country. He comes here from Afghanistan in the summer of 2021. Remember what that was like. Refugees fleeing Afghanistan, people had to be recommended by U.S. people on one end, vetted on this end by government background checks as far as they could do in Afghanistan, have sponsors and so on. He settled in Washington. He applies for asylum in December of 2024. Now, he goes through another vetting process involving that, and he's approved for asylum in April of this year under the Trump administration. He comes in under the Biden administration. These checks are being done. I remember, as a part of the Joint Terrorism Task Force in New York, where we supplied people for that vetting process, it was a lot of pressure. There was a lot of people. They were being kept in military installations. A lot of that vetting had to be done very quickly. I also remember we had to go back afterwards when we found information on certain people and bring them back. In this case, that's all we know about this individual, but it appears that he must have done work either for or with the United States in Afghanistan to become part of the Allies Welcome program and be brought here. that still doesn't get us closer to motive.
No, although
Alicia, multiple law enforcement sources tell us the suspect in this shooting is Rachmanullah Lakhanwal. Rachmanullah Lakhanwal. He's a 29-year-old Afghan national. Right now, investigators are working to know at what point Lakhanwal entered the country, what contact he has had with others, what contact and where he has traveled. They're going to talk to his friends, to his family. They're looking at his devices. We do know at this point, again, that the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force is taking the lead in this investigation. But again, multiple law enforcement sources say the suspect in the shooting that's left 2 National Guardsmen in the hospital gravely injured is Rachmanullah Lakhanwal, again, a 29-year-old Afghan national. And we're going to keep working the phones and working with David Rode, Ken Donalian, working the phones, trying to figure out and speak with sources, law enforcement sources, as far as when did this suspect enter the country, if he has any criminal history. All of that's being looked at right now. But again, the Joint Terrorism Task Force with the FBI is working this case. We're told they're working to try and determine if this is a case of terrorism. They're taking the lead on this. But again, a 29-year-old Afghan national who we're told is Rachmanullah Lakhanwal has been arrested. He is in the hospital right now. He was shot in the process of being detained, his arrest, after shooting the National Guardsman. Other National Guardsmen rushed to help. He was shot. He's in the hospital. We don't have his condition. We don't know if he's talking with investigators at this point, but he has been identified, and this investigation is far from over. We'll send it back to you.
Yeah, Mark, you've said that we don't have any word on how he's doing. Have you received any word on how the guardsmen are doing, particularly the young guardsman who was shot in the head? Do we understand exactly what her condition is?
No, we've not been updated on that as of yet. We were told one National Guardsman was airlifted, the other rushed by ambulance. They're in separate hospitals. We've not been given a condition, obviously hoping for the best for both of them. But at this point, we don't have a current condition on the Guardsman at this point in time.
And Mark, so just to be sure, I think you laid out, but to be clear, right now we do not know a motive, correct?
You're absolutely right. So we don't have a motive right now. What we have is what we know. We know this was a targeted attack. Multiple people have said that, multiple law enforcement officials as well as the mayor. So that's what we know. A targeted attack. We know that 2 National Guardsmen were critically injured in the hospital right now. But as far as a motive, we don't know what investigators say propelled the 29-year-old Afghan national to this violence. So that's still being looked at. Obviously, they're going to be talking to friends, to family. They'll be going to his house, to his home, going through that, looking for any clues that may tip off investigators as to what motivated this horrific violence. They're looking at that right now.
There are a lot of questions that the FBI is grappling with. We have been talking about this for the past few hours. This, of course, a big piece of information that you have just shared with us, the name of the suspect in custody. We had talked about this person's country of origin, how long they have been in the United States, a number of questions that are beginning to come into focus. And as you said, they will now continue with what little information they have to figure out his network of contacts, to assess his digital footprint. Is it your understanding that it is the FBI exclusively that is leading that effort, or are they working in tandem, Mark, with any other government agencies or entities?
No, this is exactly what they do. And I think this is part of the strength of the FBI is their partnerships, their relationships, not just with other federal agencies, but with local departments as well as state. So we know that the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force is taking the lead. And that task force comprised of agents, but they have great reach for local police departments.
Really, really clear that Donald tried to politicize this, and it's backfired spectacularly on him, as it always does. Even back when he was attacked back in Pennsylvania before the last election. And they tried to make it all about how it was a partisan attack on him. Turns out the guy that did it registered Republican. Right? We know what I mean? You know what I mean? And now this time, he's tried to politicize it on two fronts. And on both of those fronts, he's the one that's at blame, if anyone's at blame. First, we talked about this earlier, right? But the only reason the Guard was there was because Donald Trump sent them there. And the only reason that they were still there is because he wanted to appeal the decision that declared that deployment unlawful. As of right now, when I record this, that deployment was illegal. Those guards, and I'm not blaming them, but I am blaming Donald Trump, were only there illegally because of Donald Trump. And because of that, those particular people hurt would not have been if Donald Trump followed what everyone was telling him before. All the legal experts were saying was that eventually, Donald, your appointment will be found unlawful. And that's where we are right now. Maybe the Supreme Court will overturn whatever. But right now, it's unlawful. But more than that, this guy was given asylum by Donald Trump under Trump's powers. In April, well after Biden was president, or was no longer president. Wasn't Biden or Harris and Republicans have the House, the Senate, the presidency, the Supreme Court? They have all of it. And under their federal power, this man was given asylum. Now, I'm not saying this is a moment to crack down on asylum seekers or anything like that. I'm not going to use that as this moment because I don't think that's what you need to do. This is a tragic outcome, but I don't think you need to shift policy over it. But Republicans are trying to make that argument, trying to suggest that you need to crack down on Democrats and on immigrants, when the person responsible for creating this situation was Donald Trump.